Dangin Nira, Dan am anin Urluravhesa, eb Pinowsa. Lesson 21. Chores. It's been a while since we've added any new verb tenses. I felt you deserved a break after being hammered with all the passive and then subjunctive tenses. But we've got a few more to go. One of the more common aspects of speech is the command. Giving a command in Dangin Nira requires the imperative mood. The active imperative verb marker is amu. You've already met an example of this in the third lesson. Payamamumse, help me. Now, the imperative is most often used in the second person. So, for example, if we take the verb Syarvoi, to sing, we get Syarvamum, sing. In other persons, the meaning is slightly different. Syarvamus would be, let me sing, and Syarvamuk would be, let he, she, or it sing, and Syarvamuser would be, let one sing. The first person imperative is most often plural. For example, eb Syarvamus, let's sing. The third person is slightly more esoteric. To use a different verb and defining Anatwa as cake, we can have eb Ekropta Anatwe, which would mean, let them eat cake. Fourth person imperatives are typically used in instructions, such as in cooking recipes or in laboratory manuals. This is because such instructions are not directed to one person specifically, but to any unspecified individual who happens to read them. For example, defining Ruzgalin as complete, Yola as butter, Hevrnoi as to add, and Owbeyhevna as mixture, then Ramuzur Ruzgalorgnen Yole, Talorm Hevrnamuzernen Owbeyhevnerke would mean, melt the butter completely, then add it to the mixture. Notice again the discrepancy between English word order and Dangin Nira word order. The passive imperative marker is oabu. So if we define Azraloi as to intoxicate or to make drunk, then Azraloabus would be, let me be intoxicated. Azraloabum would be, get drunk. Azraloabuk would be, let him, her, or it get drunk. And Azraloabuzer would be, let one get drunk, or get drunk, as would be specified in a recipe or laboratory manual. For those of you who are familiar with the Our Father, there are instances of the passive imperative in it. For example, defining Roblela as kingdom and Zagda as will in the sense of a desire, then min Roblela ginamuk, min Zagda niskoabuk would mean, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Commands are often used by a parent ordering their children to do their chores, which often involve cleaning. In Dangin Nira, Pinowsa means chore, and Muyotoi means to clean. So, for example, defining Urluravhesa as bedroom, then Muyotamum sinu Urluravhese would mean clean your room. If you're talking about cleaning something with soap and or water, that can only be described in Dangin Nira with the word Tyanldoi, to wash. For example, Tyanldamumnen eb bifte would mean wash the windows. Unlike in English, there is no separate word for cleaning your teeth. If we define Hyenka as tooth, then tut tyanldetem minu eb Hyenke would mean have you brushed your teeth? Here are some useful verb-noun pairings and their translations. Tyanldoi zrinu eb Lyafkevna, to wash one's clothing. Tyanldoi nen eb Ekropta, to wash the dishes. Ekropta literally means eating tool, so this is used for silverware and glasses and everything else used when eating. Zezoi nen Disa, to mow the lawn. Zezoi means to cut, and Disa means grass. Note how this is an instance of the collective singular. Tomsenoi nen Lukaha, to feed the pet. Note how with Tomsenoi, to feed, the food is accusative, and the thing being fed is in the dative. Lukaha can be substituted with any pet animal, for example, bava or pukna or spana. To discuss more chores and commands, we need to quickly cover some more aspects of grammar. First up is pata, the reflexive pronoun. It basically means self. It is typically accusative or dative. For example, Tyanldoi pate means wash yourself. Or ged beolis pater glaske would mean I will not give myself a cookie. Notice how, unlike in English, the reflexive pronoun does not change depending on the person being reflected. Instead of myself, herself, ourselves, etc., there is just pata. There is also an adjective form, patin, which is mainly used to convey the idea of own. For example, if we define Rubroi as to hug, then en vesin hepsuma rubrok patinu nasme would mean the little girl is hugging her own mother. Patin can also be used simply for emphasis, highlighting that something belongs to the subject. If we define Gworilka as mouth and Duta as soap, then Tyanldoi patinu Gworilke dutev would mean wash your mouth out with soap. Next we have three useful prefixes. First is Balsi, which is attached to verbs to indicate that the action is just starting. For instance, remembering that Syarvoi means to stand, then Balsi Syarvoi would mean to stand up or to begin standing. If we wanted to order someone who is already standing to continue standing, we'd say Syarvomum. However, normally we want to order someone who isn't standing to stand up, so we'd have to say Balsi Syarvomum pate. Notice that Syarvoi is intransitive, it does not take an object, but adding the prefix Balsi makes it transitive, because you can not only stand up yourself, but you can stand up other things. For example, to tell someone to set a book upright, you'd say, Balsi Syarvomum taminoade. This is why pata must be used when telling someone to stand themselves up. Also remember in the first conversation when we said, Tahwas balsi toleroi me. If you remember, toleroi means to know or to be acquainted with. So, balsi toleroi would mean to get to know or to start to be acquainted with. This is also useful for another thing parents often tell their children to do. If we define Urluravhesa as to sleep, then Balsi Urluravhesum would mean start to sleep, or more idiomatically, go to bed. The next prefix is Twes, which is also used with verbs and has the meaning of undoing an action. For example, Twes dukloi means to unbuy or to return to the store. In a similar vein, Twes beoi would mean to ungive or to take back, and Twes varmkoi would mean to unkill or to resurrect. To bring in another religious reference, if we define Yeza as Jesus, then Nebitarin folma Yeza Twes varmkatrek would mean on the third day Jesus was resurrected. Finally, we have zgo, also used with verbs, and has the meaning of repeating an action. For example, zgo ogavoi would mean to reread. Zgo hirkoi would mean to go back or to return, and zgoginoi would mean to come back or to return. In a sentence, Zlantvetes sit angelela, talorm zgoginites sit ameriklela would mean I traveled to England, then came back to America. All of these prefixes can also function as verbs on their own. Balsioi means to become, Twesoi, to undo, and zgoi, to repeat. For example, if we define hadin as only, and lutama as mistake, then bava gedwinok balsioi pukne, ur gedwinom twesoi tame emenisketem, Winos hador gmazaloi kit ged sgurneum yataminu lutame would mean, a dog cannot become a cat, and you cannot undo what you have done. I can only hope that you might not repeat this mistake. That's more than enough for one lesson. You've learned how to form imperatives, both active and passive. You've learned how to talk about reflexive actions, and you've learned about the 3 verb prefixes Balsi, Twes, and Zgo. Make sure you know all this new vocabulary and move on to the next video.